In Unit 2, we're going to look at the history of nuclear energy in the U.S. and in the world. So, in 1953, Eisenhower, while he was president, said nuclear energy would provide power when it was too cheap to meter. You wouldn't have to pay for it. It's too cheap to even keep track of it. Atoms for Peace at the United Nations. The U.S. would build nuclear-powered electric generators to replace oil and natural gas. It takes the evil of atomic energy and replaces it with useful energy. Has it happened? Why not? In the 1970s, the International Atomic Energy Agency projected that 4.5 million megawatts of energy would be generated by the year 2000, 18 times the current capacity of the United States and twice all current sources. Between 1970 and 1974, the U.S. utilities ordered 140 new reactors. And then 3 Mile Island happened in 1979. There is a video on this, Meltdown at 3 Mile Island. You can watch it on YouTube, I believe. Right. So what happened? The coolant in the reactor vessel was lost. The core partially melted down. An unknown amount of radioactive gas was released into the atmosphere. Really, the damage was not so bad. There were no deaths, but it was a public relations disaster, and the reactor was shut down permanently. Here is what it looks like today. These two cooling towers and the reactors they're associated with are still active, but these two are not. As a result of the 3 Mile Island disaster, 100 of the 140 reactors that were ordered were canceled. 13 orders additionally that were placed after 1975 were all canceled. And in 1990, electricity generated by nuclear energy was twice the cost of that generated by coal. So much for it being too cheap to meter, huh? Other reactor accidents. The wide-scale plutonium reactor in England had a graphite core that melted in 1956. It released 100 million curies of radionuclides, contaminating hundreds of square kilometers. I'm sure you've heard about Chernobyl. This was a disaster in 1986. They had a complete reactor meltdown with an explosion. I think I just misclicked. Yep. Right. It is the worst nuclear power plant disaster in history. Even after Fukushima, Chernobyl's still worst. There was a major release of radioactivity and hundreds of immediate deaths and thousands of long-term illnesses. Right? Consequences of radiation exposure: mutation of cell division, damage to your biological tissues, so what makes you up, and your DNA, death, cancer, birth defects. If you're curious, Google it. Look at the images. They're pretty, well, let's just say that the little kid up in the right corner is tame compared to some of what's out there. Right? So what happened at Chernobyl? What happened? The water circulation system failed. The temperature in the reactor core exceeded 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The uranium melted, producing steam. That reacted with the graphite, and that blew the top of the building off. releasing a ton of radioactive products, whether it's the uranium or the steam from the water that was contaminated. Anything. Right. More recently, we have the Fukushima I cannot pronounce that word. Daiichi, we'll go with it. In 2011, that featured 4 reactors being permanently damaged. 2 more were slightly damaged. All were decommissioned. This was a result of an earthquake which triggered a tsunami. Prior to the disaster, nuclear energy was about 30% of the total Japanese energy produced. Since then, it's less than 1%. If you look at this website, it gives an outline of nuclear power in Japan, and kind of gives you a history of what has happened and why, the policies in the country. It's fairly interesting reading. Remember that you can access these links by going to the PowerPoint file in the resources folder. Other reaccidents. The first energy Davis-Besse reactor in Toledo, Ohio had an accident in 2002. That featured leaking boric acid that nearly ate through the reactor lid. Close one, but not actually anything released.